Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and John O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
When is a Corvid just a Corvid? Well, Daiti Yivagus Falcha. Hi, hello, and welcome. John O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And it might seem like a bit of an odd question as to why I would be bringing up the conversations about Corvids being Corvids. But from a pagan perspective and a spiritual perspective, word association does occur with deities. And that's really where a lot of people have experiences or have visualizations, spiritual messages, meetings during guided journeys with corvids. By corvids is a type of species and includes crow, hooded crows, jackdaws, magpies, ravens, rooks, and actually a lovely little one called a chuff, which I find is fascinating. I actually saw one not so long ago, but different story. So there's a group of birds, all pretty much black birds, apart from magpies being black and white, known as corvids. And in the Irish pantheon, the Irish tradition, we have a lot of association between corvids or hooded crows, ravens, and a goddess or goddesses known as the Morrigan. So when someone experiences corvids in their life or corvids during a spiritual meeting, sometimes it could be messages from the Morrigan, or it might not. And this is where things get interesting, or, well, neat answer, not hard to say, challenging, because when is a corvid just a corvid? Now, there's a number of different biases that we have to be aware of, confirmation bias being a big one, but then also perception bias. So you may actually have corvids living in your locale, but until you learn about corvids, until you begin to know the information about corvids association with various deities, god, guides, guardians, whatever, you inherently generate a perceptive bias towards then seeing corvids. Now, sometimes people are like, "Oh, there were never corvids in my area. There were never crows, and now since I took a journey at the Morrigan Academy, I'm seeing crows everywhere." So, yes, maybe it could be notifications. It could be an awareness or messengers for your building relationship with the Morrigan, or it could be the fact that you have had a blinkered bias to not see corvids, and now that you're aware, you are acknowledging the corvids. So asking the question, when is a corvid just a corvid, becomes a little bit more relevant, because sometimes it's just a crow. My partner and myself, Laura, go for regular walks at the People's Park in Waterford, and there's a lot of beautiful rooks around that park. I've taken to trying to feed them whenever I can to see if I can make friends with them, but that's my own personal enjoyment and mission for engaging with the birds. But I don't see them all as messengers of the Morrigan. I don't hear their calls and see that it is the Morrigan talking to me. But on occasion, when there is one sound without a corvid, or there is one like notable corvid not acting like a normal corvid, sometimes my partner Laura would take notice. So when is it a corvid and when is it a messenger? That is hard to say. That is not, in fact, the answer. That is not easy to say, because the only way someone can begin to understand that or diagnose that is by having built the right relationship with the deity in question. So this question specifically comes from our community, comes from our Patreon community, and someone who has been doing the work over there sent me the question to try and ask to see if I could answer it for them. And I'm probably talking a little bit towards it or around it, but I am going to read out the question to honor the effort and energy involved. And the person says, in several journeys or meditations, corvids are showing up. Pretty sure they're ravens. The first time, one handed me a smooth stone with an Om carved on it and whispered something in my ear. I personally work with Breach and the Dagda, so it seems odd. Do ravens always relate to the Morrigan? So to go straight to that question, do ravens always relate to the Morrigan? In the Irish pantheon, predominantly yes. Outside of the Irish pantheon, the raven association does occur with different deities in different pantheons. Now, the fact that this raven or corvid presented a stone with Om on it means that the Om being in very much 100% Irish, it does indicate the Irish connection more so than anything else. But working with the breach and working specifically with the Dagda, we know that connections between the two of the Danann deities are not, they're not exactly distant. Working and building a relationship with one deity can lead to bleed over connection or awarenesses with other deities. Working with the Dagda predominantly, for example, it's understandable that you might become to the attention of his wedded partner in all of the mythology and lore, the Morrigan. Now, there is one of the Nemorania, because there is the collective term for the Morrigan, as in a number of different deities known as the Bive. And the Bive is said to be the Scald Crow or the Hooded Crow or Carrion Crow. And so we see many associations in the stories of references to the Red-mouthed Bive, specifically related to battlefields and that carrion crow activity. Now, there's a very marked difference between a hooded crow and a raven. The hooded crow tends to have this grey-bodied waistcoat, also known as scald crow, whereas ravens are all black. Young ones tend to have black beaks. Older ones tend to have graying around the eyes and the beak. But I suppose more on birds. We're not here to talk avian specifically or avian biology. But I too find it difficult to acknowledge what is the difference between a raven and a rook. What is the difference between a crow and a raven? It's not always easy. Most times when you're talking ravens, it's actually size. When you see a blackbird that is absolutely massive, size of a chicken or bigger, you're talking raven. Anything smaller than chicken, you're talking rook or rook, and then but smaller again, corvids, crows. Actually, Simon, I have seen a chuff on the cliffs of Waterford, and it was tiny. It was really, really tiny. It almost confused it with a blackbird, except it had a red beak and red feet, which is why I got very confused. And I pointed it out to Laura, and Laura's like, "That's a chuff. That's technically a corvid," because Laura has been studying and doing the work with acknowledging and being aware of corvids, because Laura works for the Morrigan. So to answer this person's question, it's possible that it is connecting with the Morrigan, and the fact that you're experiencing it in guided journeys or guided meditation means that you're exposing yourself to a spiritualized mindset or your internal mindset through that focus on meditation towards your sub and unconscious information. And that is the whole purpose of guided journeying and guided meditations in that way. Now, seeing corvids out where you live, walking down the street, corvids live in many different areas. So just because you see a corvid on a tree doesn't mean that they're a messenger for the Morrigan in the real world. Um, I've had people talk about they're driving somewhere and then there's a whole cluster of corvids, and then they're worried, is this a message of doom from the Morrigan because clusters of crows are known as a murder? And I was like, no, maybe that's just where they live. It's corvids out of the ordinary, corvids acting out of the normal behaviors is where someone needs to pay attention. So unfortunately, folks, exploring and engaging in our spirituality, specifically around bird signs, means you got to know about birds. You got to learn about bird behavior under natural native environments. So, yeah, when is a corvid just a corvid? Most of the time, actually, a corvid is just a corvid. But the only way you'll know for sure is if you engage in the guided journeys, if you learn to spot behavior, and if you are building that practice of right relationship towards a deity so that you can recognize when a corvid is not just a corvid. So, I do have a resource, which I'm definitely going to recommend. If you go to the morrigan.academy/guide, there is a reference guide that is free to get, free to download there. You can join the Morrigan Academy list, but it is a free 7-page PDF to explore and answer the question, is the Morrigan calling you? So I can't say for sure if seeing a raven or a corvid in a guided meditation is absolutely guaranteed 100% the Morrigan. What I can say is a person would have not, okay, this was specifically asked as a question. So responding to that individual, I would say you have a bit of exploration to do. And during guided journeys, don't forget that you are in control and can ask. And so present the question, get yourself to the journey state, follow along with the guided meditation practice as defined by Laura. Again, free guided meditations on the Irish Pagan School as well. once you get to that point, if you experience a Corvid, ask, are you a messenger from the Morrigan? Or the Morrigan herself, she is known to shapeshift into Corvids. So now I'm visualizing the Morrigan as a tiny little chuff. I'm gonna have to write a story about that. Um, but yeah, not all Corvids are spiritual messengers, but the only way that you would recognize when one is by studying Corvid behavior and being aware of the guided meditation journey to build a relationship. I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but it is actually important that people embrace the fact that they have to do the work. It's not just a case of I've learned Morrigan is connected with crows, and now all crows out there in the world are suddenly Morrigan messengers sending unique special messages to me. I've had people come and talk to me in that way, and I worry for them. I honestly do. But then there's other people, and they're like, yeah, no, it's just a Corvid, and I'm like, that's not just a Corvid. So, as ever, the only way to answer the question 100% for sure is to do the work. And again, we have free resources available. As I said, morrigan.academy/guide. A great breakdown, great resource to find by Laura, as I said, who is an expert in this area and will help you be aware of whether or not you're experiencing connection or attention from the Morrigan. From my point of view, my side of things, I have experienced the Morrigan's attention, and I chose to say no thanks. I appreciated her job offer, and I said, no, not for me. I went in a different direction, and a while later, or maybe before I even recognized or realized it, I ended up as the Dagda person. So hopefully that answers. I really appreciate our Patreon community and the support and the questions or questions that we get there. And if you would like to know more, go again, Morrigan Academy is a great resource, or any other resources, irishpagan.school/free. Here's what a free resources there for you as well. Until next time, look after yourself, take care, agus slán. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.